y'all. We are about to kick off Made at Rec Part 1. Super excited to have you here tonight. This next segment here is exactly why this podcast symposium was born for. Welcome our Rec panelists. Let's give it up. Welcome.
Hey, welcome to Part 1 of Made at Rec. Let me have a seat. And we're gonna talk to you, all me and the panelists here. We all produce our show here at Rec in the podcasting room. We're gonna talk to you today about what we do, who we are, and how we do it. So I'd like to introduce, without further ado, our panelists for today, Nate and Twanna. I produce a show here. It's called The Mic XM. You guys are just meeting me here today for the first time. So for the audience, it is an iHeartRadio show podcast and a blog via the mic.live. We interview people we see as catalysts to the culture, by the innovative ways they gain attention. So would you mind telling the audience for us here today who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Nate Evans Jr. I'm a husband first and foremost. I'm a thought leader. I tell people all the time I create experiences for apprehensive individuals to feel worthy when they're waging a war in their mind. And then when you ask me, what does that mean? I tell you through the mediums that I do that, which is podcasting, obviously. I'm an author, I'm a professional speaker, mentor, and a coach.
That's awesome, bro. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So, and Twanna, how about you?
Hey, so I'm Twanna Toliver, and I am a creative business coach, and I work with mid-career women who actually want to use their gifts outside the confines of a corporate office. So I'm an advocate and activist for that. I want to make sure, I feel that women are underutilized in corporate America. We've been, especially women who are, have a little living underneath their belt. We've been to our 80s babies were told, get your secure job, girl, get your paycheck every 2 weeks, and everyone is miserable. Gifted and miserable. So I want to make sure that we get out of that situation.
That's great. Twanna, you describe your podcast Higher Than This, correct?
Yes.
You describe it as a snack-sized podcast.
Yes.
So how do you take these massive discussions and sometimes emotional topics and make them palatable for your audience?
Yeah. Basically, personal narrative. It's a lot of my own experiences. And now, when I started the podcast, a lot of the episodes were solo, and me just basically, it was cathartic. It was like healing. It was me dealing with all of the 20 years working in corporate America and dealing with all of the nonsense.
Yes.
And realizing, because I was talking to women who eventually became my clients, and they were experiencing the same thing. And so I was just like, okay, we have to challenge these stories and these false mindsets. And a lot of them is lived experiences that we need to just overcome in order to put our best work out in the world.
Yes.
So that's how I'm able to, and a lot of the episodes are emotional, but again, because I'm telling you that I resonate with what you are going through. This is, I'm not someone here. And another thing, I don't glamorize entrepreneurship. Both are hard. Working in corporate is hard, and entrepreneurship is hard. But you choose your hard, But there's liberation. There are a lot of things that come besides, your paycheck every 2 weeks. Yeah, and so, when I think of my podcast, a lot of people like to throw around the word empowerment. We already got permission. We don't need empowerment. We need to be equipped. That's what, that's what, that's
give me a round of applause for that.
Yeah.
Yes, honestly, podcasting is honestly about that natural feeling that you can't get with radio. I actually talked to Nate earlier about my show beginning as a radio show, and I found more freedom in doing my show more like a podcast and less of a radio show, because people really don't like commercial, right? We like it to be that more natural, so they actually understand and can level with them. Nate, your podcast, Change What We Normalize, right? Doesn't focus on just one type of person. So how can you, as a host, prepare the guests for the conversations that you're about to have?
Yeah, for the guests that I'm looking to prepare, first and foremost, I'll let them know that this isn't an interview. Because when you say it's an interview, people put on.
Right.
They put on their best face, and that's not what I want. Right? I want you to come in there and be transparent and vulnerable and have this space where you can fully be yourself We can fully get in this moment. I can have empathy for you, you can have empathy for me, and then we can get the best version of you. Because there's more people who are in their dip moment, that dark moment that you've been through and that you've gotten through, and we want to encourage and inspire those people. So I tell them, like, look, this is me, honestly, selfishly wanting to get to know you, but to sit and have an organic conversation, right? So there's not a bunch of different scripts, there's not a bunch of different things going on. It's like, hey, look, I want to talk. Let's have this conversation. I want you to share those stories that are near and dear to your heart. We can talk about your accolades, that's beautiful. We can talk about the work you're doing now, that's beautiful. Take me down here, because there's so many more creatives and people who are down there that are on the way up, but they need some encouragement, some inspiration, and know that we are all alike. So I try to just tell them, look, take off your interview face, take that off. I want you to sit back, chill, let your hair down, and we're gonna talk.
Yes, give Nate a round of applause, guys.
So it can be very hard to get a guest, right? Because you guys may be just meeting for the first time. So there's a lot of new podcasters and people interested in beginning a podcast, right? So what methods do you feel you can share for getting someone to get deeper or give those more intricate answers to questions?
Yeah, what I've noticed is that when people realize that you're actually listening without an agenda, you can get people to get deeper than they actually would if you were just to try to interview them.
So I personally have a video element to my podcast. We had a little bit short discussion about this earlier. Ultimately, do you feel it's necessary, again, the same question as earlier, do you feel it's necessary, that video element, in order to grow your reach of your podcast? And is that the best way to get results as a podcaster?
Yes and no. I still listen to podcasts that are just audio, and they're incredible podcasts and they're growing. But there is a whole nother audience that is watching visually on YouTube. I'm a YouTube watcher, so if you have a podcast out there, more than likely I'm going to actually watch it and listen to it. I'm going to actually play it in the car from YouTube, because I'm one of those type of people. Everybody's a little different, but there is an audience out there that wants to see you, even though you're just sitting around having a conversation. They want to see the expression, the emotion. They want to see the laughter and all of those things. So I think that it's huge to have that video component. If, again, you can have someone to chop up that kind of content for you, or if you know how to work a camera and edit those things, I think it's great to have that video component. I think it adds a lot to the platform. And then again, with social media, those are clips that you can utilize and use reels and things like that. So I think it's important.
And Twanna Toliver, I'll switch it up a little bit for you. How have you implemented visuals to your audio podcast? And then, same question, do you feel that it's necessary for a podcaster to implement visuals?
Yeah, the video aspect is something new for me. I've just started, because when I started my podcast, it was personal narrative. So I'm a talker.
Yes.
So I just wanted to talk. And there was a lot of times that I'll have inspiration and I may not have a deep face or my hair did, and I'm just like, some of those are my best episodes, 3 o'clock in the morning, like talking my shit. So I may not have, I may not be video ready.
Yes.
And I also didn't want, when I started my podcast, I didn't want to have an excuse not to do it. And a lot of times it's like, oh, you should have this, and you should do this, and you should do that. So then you got to get all this stuff before you just start. And I just hit record. And when I started, I really had any kind of, editing experience. And if you listen to like my first 10 episodes, they're real raw.
Those are some of the best ones.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I am now, now that I have the ability to hire someone, and now that I am doing more interviews, they're on Zoom, and I am having someone cut that up, because I do understand the value of that. But what I do to promote my podcast is I love audiograms. And I use a lot of photos of me, and I've been able to get snippets of really the best thing that I say in the podcast or someone says, and I use that as a teaser.
I was going to say, so tell us a little bit more about the audiograms for people who aren't interested in the visual aspect of the podcast. How can they implement that more to help grow their podcast?
Yeah, that's an easier way when you're first starting out instead of video. And one of the platforms that I know I've used before in the past is Headliner. And you can start off free, and basically, you can use a picture of yourself, and you can just pull a snippet. And even if you don't know how to pull a snippet from your podcast, like the young woman said earlier, you can really hire. I have an editor that I she's in
network.
Canada. Like, I'm just like, and she, you know, I'll tell her, I'll give her the time stamp and she'll pull it for me, and I will just literally take that and put it on Headliner, and it'll have like, I think they call it a wave,
Yes.
and it looks like you're speaking, and now that you have like TikTok and Instagram, you can really make it animated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Nate, for you, what would you say was the thing that helped you grow the fastest? Because everyone wants, in this day and age of social media, everyone wants things quickly. So what would you say was gave you the fastest growth doing your podcast?
Yeah, the thing that gave me the fastest growth was word of mouth. It was word of mouth spread so fast. Like, I get that we have social media and you can put the post up and all those things, but word of mouth, making connections in a place like Rec, and then from all of the guests that I had on there, I would ask for recommendations, and then they would plug me in with their network of people. So that grew things rapid, because the people that come on aren't just my guests. We build a relationship after that, and now I'm expanding into their network, and they're expanding into my network.
I think that's dope too. That the word of mouth factor is still the number one thing to
People
help grow.
underestimate it, and it's key. It's key to just borrow someone else's audience.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, like adding in, just asking your friends to give you that first rating, asking them to be that first listener to figure out, you know, what does it sound good, what doesn't sound good, so they can give you those first feedback of, you know, who's going to listen to the podcast, if they're going to even listen to the podcast. So tell us a little bit about that, the relationship with the people around you when developing your podcast.
Yeah, when I started my podcast, I told everybody and their mama, I mean everybody, even if the podcast wasn't geared for them and towards them, I still told them, like, you got, you know, a woman in your life, she's mid-career and she's like angry, I'm telling you why, listen to the podcast, right? So that I just told everybody, everywhere I went, every time I was at a networking event, I told everyone, did you listen to the podcast? And, you know, and I would, one of the things that, I would have like, you know, I copyright a lot. So I would have these like persuasive arguments, and I said, you know, and then I would get people to say, oh, sometimes they're so long. I was like, oh, mine's a snack size. You get in and out. I pitch my podcast a lot, because it's where my podcast is like the center of everything that I do. So all my social media messaging, the work that I do with my clients, all stem from my podcast. It's the vehicle.
Right. I think that's the thing to go back to with the engineer. If anyone was listening earlier that was up here, if you have a business as a podcaster, as a creative, your podcast should be that driving force, like that vehicle for pushing it. Like maybe you're also interested in doing hair or something like that. Maybe talk about some of that experiences over your podcast and see if people relate to you over that, and that'll get people more. When Nate was talking about those listeners that, you know, actually are there for you, and, you know, not someone that just happened to flick through it on social media.
Can I add something to that too?
Oh, absolutely.
Just really quick, for those of you that are looking to create podcasts, that are looking to get your stuff out. It's like just put it out. Like, let go of your pride, let go of your ego, let go of what you think that people may think about what you're creating, and just put that thing out. Like raw, unfiltered, uncut, put it out.
Absolutely, thank you. Twanna, any remarks from you for creating your podcast here at Rec, you know, utilizing this space? Any tips for people that are thinking about utilizing the space here at Rec that you could give?
Yeah, I say do it. For the first 2 years of my podcast, I'm from New York. I just recently moved to Philadelphia.
Shout out New York.
I followed my daughter here. I sent her to Temple, and then I ended up following her here. But I was recording out of my office, and I was looking for a studio, and I actually got an email for an event, and I was like, RecPhilly, and I came here and I was like, oh, and I can already tell the difference of the way my podcasts sound. It's just a huge dramatic difference. So I wholeheartedly implore you to definitely invest in your podcast and do it here. It's so much easier, and the editing process is so much easier because the sound quality is just so amazing. So I definitely highly recommend doing it. And the people here the staff is so, oh my gosh. And I have to tell the story real quick.
You guys are amazing.
The staff here is so amazing.
For that. Nate, I guess I should ask you the same question. What are some of the things that some advice you could give to some of the new people here that's thinking about starting a podcast here at Rec? Some of the things that they could utilize, some of the things that could help them along the way.
Yeah, if you're thinking about it, stop thinking, just do it. Because you're going to talk yourself out of it. You know what I mean? We can talk ourselves out of a lot of different things. But I'm challenging you to do it. It's incredible. I remember my first time being in Rec was for Voices and Powers for a poetry event, and I got exposed to this space. Prior to that, I was doing my podcast in my home office from my phone. I know that's like the phone isn't the best quality, but I pumped out 30 episodes from my phone of quality content to get it to people who needed it. I was blessed to come in this space and then meet a few people, make some connections, and then I met my business partner over there, Mike, who actually started to help me with the engineering and the video, and then we pumped out season 2, and now we're working on season 3, and we even have our own podcast together,
Shout out
which
to that.
is dope, that we're starting to launch now. That's launching, I think first episode is already out, right, Mike? Yeah, first episode is already out. But there's power in you taking the first step with no certain outcome. Too many times we try to figure out the certain outcome of what the next step is. It's like, yo, just take the step and you'll get exposed to so much more. You never know who you'll meet within this space.
That's facts, bro. And I think, like you said, there's so many people here that you can connect with and help make that happen. You got your guy here. Shout out to you for being here, for supporting. Just to say something that you guys just didn't touch on, just some of the other tools like rental. Like sometimes you don't have equipment. Audio equipment is very, very, very expensive. So there's audio equipment here that you can check out. When I first started my podcast here, I did not have audio equipment. Sometimes I don't feel like even bringing like my DJ board. I come here to even practice, my DJing skills, and I don't feel like carrying the stuff all the time. So having the equipment here to kind of just rent, and you don't have that extra lug every time you want to go to record an episode, it just makes things simpler. So when you think about connecting the network and simplicity, definitely think about Rec. Oh, and great energy, by the way, too. Shout out to you guys.
The energy, yes.
I was about to say, Rec comes with a vibe.
Yes,
You don't gotta try to create it. It's like it's here when you get here.
So I'm gonna introduce Scarlett. Scarlett, you can, welcome back up here.
Thank you. Let's give it up to Twanna, to Nate, to DJ JSO, for Nate at Rec Part 1. Again, this segment right here was really the anchor point for why we were doing this today. It is so incredibly powerful that, again, you get up and you stop thinking. So congratulations. Let people know where they can find you.
Oh, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at official DJ JSO. You can find my show everywhere at the Mike XM. Go ahead, Nate, you can take it away.
Yeah, you can find me pretty much everywhere at Nate Evans Jr., but on Instagram you can find the podcast. It's at Change What We Normalize and at Being Me Is Dope. So that's where you can find me.
Twanna Toliver on Instagram, and the podcast is on every platform where you get your podcast.
Give it up one more time for our lovely panelists. Thank you so much for sharing and creating here. You guys are the community, so I really appreciate it. Again, a 5-minute break, and we'll be right back with It Takes Two. We are learning about finding that perfect co-host and the chemistry that comes with it. So I'll see y'all in 5.
Damn, DJ JSO.